like to call this meeting to order, the City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission, March 20th, 2013. Roll call, please.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
Kirk Martin, John Clark,
Here.
Chris Colbert, William Gilbert,
Here.
Tricia Griffin,
Here.
Karen Kahn.
Here.
All right. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Well, before I go on, I'd like again to congratulate the airports and everyone involved on the completion of the terminal project and the receipt of the LEED Gold, and really thanks for that really wonderful ceremony this morning. All momentous achievements.
And thank you all for coming.
All right. So, public comment. Any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject matter within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled before them that same day. Total time for public comment is 15 minutes. Normally, we would take public comment on an item with that item, but
No other speaker slips.
yeah, we do have two speaker slips. And we could go ahead and do that now, or we could do that with the item.
With the item.
We'll do that with the item. Okay, notices that the Budget Subcommittee scheduled for Wednesday, March 2013 at 3 p.m. was canceled due to lack of quorum. That on Thursday, March 14th at 5:30 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Commission, or Airport Administration. The minutes. We have a recommendation that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes for Wednesday, February 20th, 2013. Do I have a motion?
I will make the motion that we accept the minutes
I'll second.
All in favor of approving the minutes as presented?
Aye.
as. Aye.
Aye.
Objection? The minutes are approved. The consent calendar, we have a lease agreement to PACnet Incorporated, a consent to First Amendment to sublease between Signature Flight Support and Coastal Aviation, and the February property management report. Do we have any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
All right. Motion?
For approval? So made.
Second.
Second?
How was that?
All in favor of approving the consent calendar?
Aye.
Objection? The consent calendar is approved. And liaison reports, I believe we have both our liaisons there. City of Santa Barbara liaison, Councilmember Randy Rouse. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, first of all, send kudos to staff for just a tremendous presentation and awards, our ribbon cutting this morning for the Ovington Terminal. That was fabulous. As the director likes to say, they are very good at putting on parties in this department. So that was great. As far as city business goes, we are in our budget cycles as we speak. Most of the budgets are status quo. We are doing reasonably well. We're in the black for our general funds. Our sales taxes are slightly up, and we've reported, and I think it relates to this particular commission, we're I think it's either 33 or 37 consecutive months of increasing transit occupancy tax year over year. So that's tremendous, and I do think it is in no small part to the success of this operation out here and bringing folks into town. So with that, I will take any questions that you may have about the city of Santa Barbara, and that would conclude my report. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have the City of Goleta liaison, Mayor Pro Tem Michael Bennett.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. I'd like to first apologize for not being here last time, but I was in bed sick. I know that's the excuse of many, but I certainly came down with something, so that's my excuse as well. I would like to also note that today, unfortunately, I had conflicts that would not allow me to be at the dedication ceremony, and our mayor is out of town up in Sacramento. So there was nothing intended by the lack of our attendance today at the dedication ceremony. So I want that clearly understood. Mentioning about our budget, we're also in the black. We're doing reasonably well. Our TOT is up considerably from where it was, and we were successful in our voters approving a 2% increase, so from 10 to 12% for our TOT, which is a reflection on the airport and what you can bring in here for us, which we appreciate very, very much. And as we've shown before, the impact of opening up a new hotel, which we did on August 23rd for the new Marriott at Stork and Phelps, has not impacted any of our local hotels within the city of Goleta, and everyone's doing quite well. So we think that's just an absolutely wonderful thing. And now we have another product for people to stay at in the city of Goleta that's close by to the university, close by to the business community, and can be easily reached from the airport. So we think that's just a real synergistic and positive thing. And we're moving forward with our other hotel products, and we're hopeful that within the next 6 months to a year, we'll have some further approvals to be able to announce that will also benefit our community and certainly the business community out here that relies on the airport so much for people coming in. So anyway, that's my report. I'm open to any questions, anything you might have. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Our next item is the agreement for the Marine Tribute Glass Sculpture, and it has been suggested by the director that it would be more expeditious if we kind of reverse the order of the two items there, and first receive the presentation and provide any comments on the tribute itself, and then the action item for us tonight is the approval of an agreement between the Pierre Clyson's Museum and Library Foundation and the City of Santa Barbara that deals with transferring rights, titles, interests. This is, my belief is this is really what we are being asked to do is just approve in concept that contract agreement. We are not approving or not approving the sculpture itself. There is this is a public place, and there's an entire process that goes through. So tonight's action is simply approving in concept such an agreement. So if there's no objections, we will do the presentation, which may answer some of the questions that then feed into our discussion about the maintenance title agreement. All right.
Since we last were here, we've done a presentation. We've been refining the design based on feedback that we've received not only from your commission, but also the other committees we've done in front of our architectural review.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can we wait just a second so we can mic him up so people can hear? Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to miss any delicious word.
Introduce himself.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Introduce himself.
The roving microphone. All right, and if you wouldn't mind, just beginning again with introducing yourself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Douglas Lochner. I'm the sculptor who was selected to create this tribute for this project. Again, as I said, since the last time we were here in front of you, we've done a lot of work addressing comments that were brought up during the approval process, and also doing structural engineering and further refining the design. There's a couple things I wanted to point out before going into the presentation. One is, as you had pointed out, there's a process involved for getting this approved. This has been in the works since 2008. I've been involved since 2010. We've gone through numerous approval cycles, and sometimes those commissions ask for things contrary to what the other commissions ask for, so we end up having to juggle and balance. And I think we've done a really good job at doing that. The other thing is that, I think this is an amazing gift for the city of Santa Barbara and the people of Santa Barbara. certainly a generous donation on the part of the Clayson Foundation, strictly for the cost involved and also the effort that they put into this. So we started out, like I said, with having to address some issues with ADA requirements. They were talking about the grade of the ground and things like that. Concern about how it fit in with the existing terminal, and making sure that it didn't overwhelm the space. So this is a view of the existing terminal entrance, which was photographed just a couple days ago. Through the magic of Photoshop, we have it with the sculpture in place. In this case, the ground has been lowered from approximately the 4-foot mound that is there to a 20-inch tall, just about a 2-foot rise to meet ADA requirements, and sidewalks have been installed to allow access through the sculpture and around the sculpture. The current view from the historic terminal and the proposed view from the historic terminal. Again, you can see relative to the context of the airport, the sculpture is very small, it's minimal, and that's by design. This is straight on from essentially the bus waiting area, and again, with it in place.
Doug, can
Short-term
you
parking.
point out,
Sorry?
go back and point out where the sculpture is? It's hard to see.
Here, pointing in. So there's the sculpture there. If you, again here, you know, it's with there's a fair amount of visual, I hate to call it clutter, but there's a lot going on visually in this space. The main things that we wanted to do is make sure we didn't compete with this front entryway and with the existing, the historic terminal. And I've taken great care to make sure that in fact does not happen. The new sculpture base here, you see the stepped curved base, was done to address comments that were made about the base. There was a lot of discussions about whether it should be up so that people couldn't sit on it and things like that. This makes it so somebody can't sit on it, but it also minimizes its visual impact so it doesn't compete. All the other options were just too massive. The step curves pick up this crown molding off the building. So the sculpture itself has a lot of elements that factor back to the architecture of the building, both the new and the old terminal, that we're pulling out and using to emphasize actually the architecture of the terminal reflected in the sculpture. So again, the existing view from short-term parking with the sculpture in place. And I think we can all agree that that it's not overwhelming. It's, in fact, almost underwhelming. And again, that's by design. We sent this out for engineering we had two of the top structural glass engineering firms in the world. We had a competition for them to engineer it. That engineering is now complete. We know we can build it. We've gotten bids for the construction and erection of it. I've talked to contractors about grading and how to pull this off with minimal impact on the day-to-day operations of the airport. Signage, what I'm proposing is that all the signage be glass, and it would be etched glass and then laminated, so sandwiched so that the etching doesn't get dirty. And it would be essentially behind the sculpture. So again, the whole idea here is to have a streamline of visual as we can possibly achieve and keep this minimalist approach, this sort of reflection, if you will, or ethereal image. And it's not really until you approach the sculpture that you get what I'm trying to achieve, which is this emotional response, hence the walkways and the need for people to walk through this. Because that's really what's going to, I think, create the impact that we're trying to get from this. Rather than be a figurative work, you know, a bust of a pilot or an airplane or something like that, this is meant to be a bigger concept. It's too easy for people to dismiss a figurative thing. You know, you see an airplane, you see a pilot, you know what it is. So people walk by it, they can easily ignore it. What we wanted to do was come up with something that when people saw it, it drew them in. It drew them toward this so that they could walk through the walkways, at which point they see the information here about the significance of this facility to the outcome of World War II. And that's really the purpose of this tribute, is to inform people, to educate people that Santa Barbara played a pivotal role in the war with the training of pilots. I think that's about it, unless you had other questions. This is an aerial view of the layout with the sidewalks, and relative to that little piece of grass, you know, this currently is a planter area where there's not grass or shrubbery. It could be kept that way. The sidewalks are designed to be minimal and still meet ADA requirements. They're designed in such a way to encourage a natural flow so that people can walk through it on their way to and from the terminal, and keeping as much grass as possible. And this is a view of it relative to the entire terminal. And again, this is your other grass green belt. That's that green belt there. And this has planters as well, but they're behind a wall.
Doug, could you talk about maintenance?
The glass is treated with a nanopolymer, essentially a special coating that makes dirt and grime and water and stuff sheet off. It's very similar to the same thing that they put on jet windshields. Obviously, when you're flying at 500-600 miles an hour, you can't have window wipers. So the maintenance is going to be very similar to the maintenance that is being done on the airport on the windows of the terminal. You know, you're going to clean it a couple times a year. It's my understanding that the maintenance is covered by the agreement, that there's a clause in there, and then there's an extended maintenance where the coating's reapplied at certain intervals. Again, that's covered in the agreement between the Claysons and the city. Other than that, there's really very little maintenance. The lighting of the sculpture, if you lit at night, and by the way, it won't be this green color. This is float glass, conventional float glass, which has a green hue to it. You can see that in these. This is float. This is what it'll be made of. This is blow iron glass. So it will be much clearer. Unfortunately, when I made that, I didn't have blow iron glass. So it actually will be white, a white light, not a green light, coming out of it. The LEDs are essentially the highest efficiency LEDs you can buy. They're made by Cree Electronics, 50,000 hour minimum life. They're on a sliding tray system. There'll be spares of everything, so that if something does go out, you simply remove an access panel, pull out a tray. These things look like a little hockey puck. You stick it in, shove it back in. I know you got LEED Gold, which is fabulous. This actually has all kinds of LEED points built into it. educational, energy, just, you know, there's an art. So if you wanted to get more lead credit, this certainly would qualify on multiple levels. So just an FYI there.
Okay, well, thank you. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into it since we last saw it to continue to refine that. Before I get to the commissioners' comments, I'd like to open the floor for the public comment. We have 2 requests to speak slips. If there's anybody else, if you wouldn't mind filling out a slip and giving it to the secretary there. I would request that you try to keep your remarks to 2 minutes a person, and the total comment time is 15 minutes. First, we have Ginny Brush with the Arts Commission.
Chair Miller, members of the Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm the Executive Director of the County Arts Commission, and I serve as staff to the City Arts Advisory and to the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee. We initially saw this project on February the 19th, 2012, and the committee unanimously was in favor of the project moving forward. Since that time, we've had a joint meeting with the Airport Commission, the county, the City Arts Advisory and the Visual Arts and Public Places to give input. What I see here tonight addresses a lot of the concerns that were expressed. There was the issue of ADA accessibility. There was the interest in doing less hardscape and more landscaping, which I also see here today. The thing that I think is most remarkable is I know there was great concern over the height and dwarfing the historical building and the terminal, and I think that has been addressed very well here. I think the scale feels very good. It certainly, I think, fits in nicely, and I think the new rise steps, the sort of the segmented base works better, I think, than we initially saw. So I just want to say that our committees are certainly in support of the project. We'll be happy to speak at council if it goes to there for approval. And I just also want to take this opportunity to compliment airport staff, your commission, and the Pierre Kleisens Foundation for the dedication in moving this project through the process and your continued commitment. So I thank you for that.
All right, thank you. And we have Mr. John Blankenship from Santa Barbara.
Chairman and Commissioners, I want to say in December of '08, I approached Karen, bless her heart. She's helped us all the way as this has evolved from what all my military friends out there would like to F4U Corsair out there, as big as life. Next thing we wanted was the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor for the Marine Corps, and lastly, we wanted the flag of Iwo Jima. We've since gotten past that part, and it's been a struggle for us because of the artistic nature of this to sort of be brought along and see the value of it. And now I think I can speak for all the Marine guys. I'm a Navy fellow, so that the fact that we embrace this and we would love to see it through fruition. The Pierre Kleisens, I thought initially we would maybe put $100,000 into this project, and it has since grown. And as Karen knows, getting the engineering and the firms there, we're up well over $1 million. We will be able to do that. We're probably, this will be one of the most significant tributes to the military and to the spirit of what was the Second World War west of the Mississippi. So having been a native California, I grew up in San Diego with a lot of airplanes and a lot of ships, and also I lived in San Francisco where I flew out of. But this is extremely unique, and with the contract for the maintenance, we see this as very positive, and we will set aside whatever funds that are necessary. It needs to come from the engineers because they're the ones that are going to dictate how we do what we do here. So Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any other speaker slips?
I don't.
Okay, I will then open it to questions, comments from the commission. Do we have any?
Okay, I guess I'm going to lead this off. I appreciate this thing. I noticed that for a bunch of us, you're all looking well and hale and hearty. Glad to see that. I assume you're getting your veterans benefits like I am. I got $1 the other day. The ABR and the HFC, or the ALC, the Historic Landmarks Commission, Planning Commissions have parameters to apply to this project. If it meets them, it's a go. As an airport commissioner, my parameter is who wants it, its impact, and is it worth it? Who wants it? The Clason's Veteran Museum and Library Director and their board of admirals, generals, colonels, majors, and some with no stated rank. Local veterans, airport staff, those who wrote letters in the last couple of days, and I'm sure there are others. Who doesn't? All the citizens who passed negative comments to the commissioner, former head of the ABR and lead of the initial terminal design committee, former sheriff and a Marine, a Navy pilot, now a local CEO, a lady who worked on the Marine training post, former FAA person, some airport staff, and I'm sure there are others. Those have written some letters too, even though I didn't get them lately. The general trend, though, is, even though there's been some other suggestions, is they don't think the wing structure is appropriate as a tribute or a lawn decoration. They want the terminal left alone. Now look at its impact. The terminal design group expended considerable effort to place every tree, light, curb, walkway to complement the terminal's grace. This tribute was not part of their consideration and is not designed to complement the terminal's Spanish Moorish theme. It will take away one of the two grass areas that frame the terminal entrance. I hate to lose half of the landscape spaces, beautiful vistas, and sense of place noted in yesterday's place release on the completion of the terminal. The two 20-foot glowing glass structures will be a detractor during the day, but considerable due to the soft lighting of the terminal at night with its volume of light. There are already two memorials of the Marines on the airport, and you don't have to pay parking to view them. The tribute, as the artist states, doesn't reflect anything to do with war. The wings are symbolic, not the wings of the Marine emblem or the pilots. It's not relevant to its intent and won't be recognized as anything it's supposed to represent, and won't evoke any emotion, no matter how much signage there is. The Marines trained here over 6 decades ago, and this was just one of many military air training bases. To me, this has become more of a trophy than a tribute. Is it worth it? Supporters shout loudly, and the public funds will pay for the tribute, not the cities. But who's really paying? The cost for the tribute is to be $1 million, paid from donations to a veterans organization. As one who gives to organizations which help veterans and servicemen and women, I strongly object. There are veterans from World War II to the present in our area that need support, especially in this time of cutbacks. Almost every day in the paper there's something about a veteran's needs. Almost every day in the mail is a plea for veterans' assistance. But we're being asked to consider taking their possible donation and construct a non-relevant tribute. As one of the letters to the editor put it, the choice between a questionable and expensive work of art and living benefit for a wounded veteran is obvious. To the museum's board of generals and admirals, I ask, whatever happened to look to your troops? There's no such thing as a spare million for something non-relevant. Honor those that made the supreme sacrifice by helping those that remain. They're the ones that are hurting and need. I can't see the wings. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gilbert. Other commissioners? Commissioner Clark.
I concur completely with Commissioner Gilbert. When we're looking at in the present, I mean, maybe later, but not now. 67,000 veterans homeless. They're talking about 1.5 million right on the edge of being there. This is not the time to spend $1 million on something in the lawn, to me. I was thinking about this afternoon, and the term that came up in one word, I'm embarrassed by it. If we do it, People are going to look at it and say, oh, airport money, city money. We know it's not. We know it's private funding. But that's going to be the public perception from a lot of it. Also, there was one during the artists thing. The agreement that we have does not state anything about them providing maintenance. It's on the city.
We'll discuss that.
Okay, fine. I just pointed that out. Anyway, I am with Commissioner Gilbert on this. I can't support it.
And again, we're not asking
Understood.
for a, okay.
Understood.
Commissioner?
Well, I have been moved by the process and the sculpture. At first, I was not taken by it, but the emotion that's gone into it, and I think what I visualize it creating and has stirred in me is the recognition of the importance of our airport and what role it played in World War II. And I think it's fitting and beautiful, while I do believe that we need to take care of our veterans because they're who we owe it all to. I would love to have this as a part of the city's representation of what took place here. So I would support it.
Commissioner Khan?
I'd like some more information about the maintenance. I think it's a beautiful sculpture. I think the problem is in these times, all of us are under very strong scrutiny. And that's not to say this might not be something that would be very appropriate at a later time or perhaps in a different place. You know, the number of people who get to see it, as pointed out, is going to be only those who paid to park to walk up to it. I can't imagine at the rate we are not allowed to linger at the curb that anybody else is going to really get to spend any time with it, and it may well be that it has and needs to have a much more fitting audience. We have quite a large campus, if you want to call that, for the airport, but the number of people who really get to see it and understand the significance of it, you know, in my mind, you could probably do better if, for example, let's say it went over to UCSB, where there are thousands of people who get the opportunity to see it, and particularly the young people who get perhaps a little bit better vision of what our country has been and hopefully will be in the future. So this is the first I have heard of the issue since I'm newly returned to the commission. So I would like some more information on the maintenance, because given our tight financial situation and the possible ramifications of having to maintain something to a standard that we'd like to be sure that it's maintained to, and cutting into our funds, I would like to know a little bit more.
And I believe that will be the topic of the next portion of this item. Okay. I guess my comments are, you know, I certainly appreciate the sentiments of some of the commissioners. I also believe that individuals have their own freedom of choice on how they choose to express their gratitude and display that gratitude. And I personally think it is just a really remarkable piece of art, and like one of my other commissioners, was very moved by it, and I really appreciate the tremendous amount of work that's gone into getting it this far. I imagine that the artist had no idea what he was getting into, and I certainly appreciate everyone's determination and hard work going into that. I believe that would be acceptable. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind stepping to the podium.
There's been a few comments brought up which I think are perhaps a misunderstanding of what this is about. First off, the Pierre Claessens Museum Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission statement is to honor the men and women who have served our country. It isn't to support them. That really is the job of our federal government. When veterans come back, it's not the people, you and I, or nonprofit foundations that are being forced to support them. That's not really what it's about. That becomes something that is bigger than all of us. That's a job that falls on our government. So I think it's wrong to say that funds that would support this would be taken out of the hands of veterans, because that simply isn't true. These funds are allocated for one purpose and one purpose only, to make sure that the people who are served, who have served, are remembered. And that's what this is about. This is an educational tool. This is a tool as a beacon, literally a beacon, of hope and of elation that people do serve, because God help us if they don't, right? And that's what this is about. This is a tribute to the men and women who every single day give of themselves to serve us. And it's a higher calling. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. And that's the educational component of this, which is why it's very important to me that people experience it, that it has the scale that it has, and that people are able to walk through it. The airport's, I feel, a perfectly fitting place because, for one, for a lot of people, it's their first entrance into Santa Barbara. And this speaks to Santa Barbara's significant role in the turnaround of World War II, in training those pilots, and what took place here. And it also speaks on a broader sense to all veterans who have served in all conflicts, which is, in fact, the mission of the museum. So, I hate to pick hairs, but I mean, that's really what it's about. And I think we need to stay focused on the fact that we're not taking money from other causes. This is money that is being spent directly within the mission statement of this nonprofit. Also, there was a discussion of architecture and not, getting rid of grass and things like that, not being designed with the terminal in mind, and that is absolutely a false. And I actually take personal offense to you telling me how I'm doing my job, because my inspiration for this sculpture is based on two things. One are these wings. Okay? These are Marine aviator wings. They are one of my main and the other graphic thing that this all came from is the architecture of the terminal. Because I took the architectural renderings of the terminal before it was built and used them to pull off sections that are in that sculpture. So there's angles and curves that are in that sculpture that are actually in the building. The new bases reflect the crown molding in the building. I mean, there's a whole group of elements that knit together that you don't necessarily see, but your mind sees it. And that's one of the reasons why when you look at those renderings, it works so well. And I think that's why the ABR and the HLC both were really in favor of this, because they saw that it does, in fact, enhance, not detract. So anyway, those are, sorry, but I just wanted to correct, what I felt were misunderstandings.
I notice you're walking back and forth nice and easy. A couple of weeks ago, I was up at Vandenberg with a young man that didn't have any legs. Now, I prefer to have that he needs help. Now, lately we're having a deal where it's up to 2 years before some of our new veterans can even get their benefits. But you want to build this, that's why I don't. I don't appreciate some of those things that you're saying there, because I do believe in the wings of the emblem and the wings of the pilot. They're very important. You see those, it's universal. You see the, I'll fold back the other one. Those are universal anywhere in the world. They evoke emotion. This doesn't evoke anything to me, but it does invoke the cost of what it's taking away from others.
Mr. Chair?
And I think we
could move on.
Yeah, with all due respect, we're not having a discussion about the piece of art this evening. There are other forums that are also involved in this. We're one voice of many, and there, as was pointed out at our joint commission meeting with the Arts Commission, the visual arts and public places, art can be very polarizing, and I think it's important for everyone to acknowledge that and be comfortable with that. Not everyone will always agree with every piece of art, and in fact, that's part of the motivation in a piece of art is to bring out that balance. So I'd like to then move us to the second portion of this, which we are being asked to consider, which is simply a contract or a agreement, and which could in abstract be for any piece of art. Should this particular item move forward, then this would apply to that. But I'd like us to try in our minds to separate the two issues, because this is kind of a maintenance and title agreement. This is not the full agreement itself. This is a summary of those items, and I believe we're going to have a presentation on this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Commission, as you know, in 2008, we instituted a public art program for the new airline terminal, and that was done in collaboration with the City Arts Advisory Committee and the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee. Part of the terminal project budget had $100,000 towards public art, which we spent on refurbishing three pieces of art on long-term loan. One was the Channing Peak mural that we had refurbished and is on long-term loan from the Santa Barbara County, the courthouse lantern, and I'm missing one thing. Oh, I know. The albatross and the Good Time clock, which we also had refurbished. With each of those entities that own those pieces of art, we have an agreement very similar to this one that spoke to who owned it, who had the right to use the images of it to make postcards or whatever that we might want to do, how it would be maintained, which in all those cases was the airport's responsibility. We also put out an RFP for 3 pieces of art that we commissioned local artists to produce, and in those cases we also did agreements with the artists who submitted a maintenance plan, and again the airport takes on the maintenance responsibility for the pieces. As Mr. Blankenship said, that in 2008 the Pierre Kleissens Museum Foundation, Mr. Blankenship approached me about the organization wanting to participate in some way in the new terminal project and the public art program. And as he said, we, their first idea out of the gate was a bust of a pilot. And as Ms. Brush had pointed out, the basement of many museums are full of busts of people. That isn't really the type of art that is not in fashion, but in vogue today. The selection process, the Pierre Kleissens allowed the airport staff and the city arts, Santa Barbara County Arts Commission staff to develop a request for proposal, which we put out, and we received a number of proposals and whittled it down to 2 artists, and actually it was a request for qualifications. That 2 artists whose background and type of art kind of fit into the types of projects that we kind of foresaw for this particular piece of art. I think the project has been described adequately so far, so I won't go through that. But the project did go through the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee in February of 2012 for preliminary review, followed by the Architectural Board of Review in April of 2012, and then Airport Commission in June of 2012. The Visual Arts and Public Places Committee enthusiastically approved the concept. They're very excited about the art. The Architectural Board of Review was also very excited about the art. They did have some suggestions on the benches and ADA access and other issues that you heard this evening. And at Airport Commission, you as well had comments on ADA access maintenance, people bumping their heads, that type of comment. And then in September of 2012, we had a joint meeting between VAP, ABR, and Airport Commission. And at that meeting there happened, and at the ABR meeting there also happened to be, I'm back up. At the VAP meeting there also happened to be a Historic Landmarks Commission member who is a liaison to VAP in the audience who spoke in support of the project. But the project has not gone to Historic Landmarks Commission itself, although two members did speak in support of it, but it didn't go to the full commission. I just wanted to make that clear. As we've done with all the artwork in the program so far, the proposed agreement speaks to the tribute construction in that the foundation will construct the art in the location and in the manner of which it has been approved by the various commissions, as well as obtain a building permit. And that they will, at their sole cost and expense, install the piece of art and all the surrounding site that's associated with it. Once the piece is installed, at the completion of the project, they will transfer to the city all the right, title, and interest to the tribute. And then the next section is the copyright license waiver and waiver of Civil Code Section 987. And that Civil Code section is really a protection, and Ms. Brush can probably correct me if I get off track here, but is to protect the artist's, what they call moral rights, so that if someone purposely alters or damages their art, they have a right to not have their name associated with that piece anymore. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. And in this case, what we're saying is that the city wants all the right to it, so that if we want to photograph it, use it for promotion of the airport, any way that we want to, then we have that right to do that. Under maintenance and repair, we've had a lot of discussion about maintenance of the sculpture, and some of the thoughts that came up were, what if the foundation isn't in existence anymore? What really is involved in the maintenance? And from all I can read and understand about this is that the maintenance would be the changing of the LED lights. I believe they'll last, 10 to 15 years. Washing the glass occasionally. If I asked also about what if someone was able to scratch the glass or the stainless steel, and those are able to be buffed out by a company that specializes in that. You can imagine stores have glass fronts and that sort of thing that do get scratched. So what this proposal suggests is that just like we required of all the other pieces of art, that the foundation and the artist deliver to us a tribute maintenance plan that will include all the manufacturers represented for the project with contact information, the expected life of the materials and cost, and that the plans specify the approved cleaning method and a recommendation inspection checklist and schedule. And that they also, at the completion of the project, deliver to us as-built plans for the project. The other major paragraph of the agreement was that if it should get damaged, whether it's man-made or natural, by some type of natural cause, that the city can repair it, or the city can choose not to repair it and remove it. But the city says that we will attempt to contact the artist, and if the city decided that they wanted to remove it, and see if the artist wanted to remove the tribute himself, and then the cost associated with that would be on the artist if he chose to. And I had a question from Chair Miller earlier saying that he thought perhaps the Pierre Kleissens Foundation should also be given that option if the city didn't want to repair the sculpture. So I can have that added in as well. So those are the major, basic parts of the agreement. And, of course, the city attorney will approve to the form and make sure it's legal in legal format and so forth. So I'm asking tonight that Commission recommend that City Council approve the agreement.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is essentially the maintenance and licensing agreement, which my understanding from you is that it's fairly consistent with those same agreements. In fact, probably a little more robust than some of the agreements for some of the other pieces of art that we have in place. And I'd certainly like to point out that public art is a very important part of the fabric of our community. It's part of what makes it such a special place and brings people from all over the world here. So the city does have a duty to maintain that because it is for the benefit of the city as well. So with that, I will open it to comments from the Commission on the proposed agreement. Commissioner Khan.
I still haven't heard any details on costs to maintain this, or in the event that it did have to be removed, what would be the cost to remove it and mitigate the property back to the way it was before? I mean, all I've heard is that we get to pay for it, but we don't know what that is.
Well, I can just estimate the cost if we had we have a company that washes the windows in the terminal probably once or twice a year. It costs, if you can believe this, about $1,500 to do the whole terminal and the glass boarding bridges. So I don't think this would be, a significant cost in terms of cleaning the glass. In terms of if there was an earthquake, I mean, it's going to be structurally engineered, but if it should fall on an earthquake or crack, I don't know how much it would, I don't have an estimate of what it would cost to take it down. Let's see, the LED lights, they're not going to be burning out very often.
You're going to get spares.
That you'll get, okay.
They're the hockey puck itself costs less.
And how many are there?
And they have a warranty. Company warranty.
Other comments on the form of the agreement? Other comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
Can I make a motion?
A motion, we need a motion to recommend to the city to approve the agreement in concept.
I will move that motion. To approve?
Is you looking for a second or what?
Second.
Okay, I'll second it. I'd like to have a roll call vote, please.
Certainly. A roll call vote on the recommendation that the City Council approve an agreement between the Foundation and the City of Santa Barbara to transfer all right, title, and interest to the tribute to the city and other terms as in the proposal. I will start at my right, Commissioner Clark.
Explain one more time what we are voting on. The form of the form rather than...
I think it's essentially the basic terms of the agreement. The full
Terms of the
agreement
agreement.
is essentially a contract between the city and the foundation.
Aye.
Aye, Commissioner
Griffin
Griffin.
says aye.
Commissioner Gilbert.
Second. I couldn't hear her. She was sitting back in the back there.
The vote on this item for recommending the approval of the contract. Sorry?
Okay.
That was an aye?
No, it's a no. Excuse me, I didn't know we were voting on it because I didn't hear her call a roll. But that's all right.
Oh, I suppose we could have let her call the roll. I'm
Well,
sorry.
Can I ask a question? We will have a separate vote on whether or not we want to recommend that this project go before the city council. At this point, all we're doing is suggesting that if it were approved, we would want to have this maintenance agreement in place.
I believe that's a
On
fair
April 9th,
summary.
it's scheduled to go to City Council, the agreement, and a presentation will be made to council, and if council does not approve the agreement, then essentially they're not approving the project.
But they won't have any other opportunity to be voting on the proposal. It all is based around the maintenance agreement. It's not, there's not a separate proposal to accept the art and one other proposal to accept the maintenance.
I
don't-
believe, my understanding was there's still more of a process that needs to be completed to accept the art, the project proposal itself.
So far, the piece itself, the public art review process that was established by City Council says that the Visual Arts and Public Places Committee has the responsibility of reviewing and approving public art on public land, and that other committees or commissions as appropriate, such as ABR if it's an outdoor piece, or Airport Commission if it's on airport property, also review it, and but VAP is given the responsibility of approving the project, and that it can go to council, may go to council. In this case, the agreement will go to council, and they'll get a presentation about the project. But the project still, it's only gone through preliminary review at this point. To me, there was no point in the foundation in continuing to spend money on this if council is not supportive of the project. So that's how it's going to go, and then it has a whole round of final reviews that it goes through with the same commissions, and then it goes to the Planning Commission for a coastal development permit as well.
So we will see this again.
You can consider it
as, so this is not a recommendation for the sculpture, it is a recommendation only for the maintenance plan.
It's the recommendation for the agreement that will transfer the title of the piece of art to the city, and then all the other provisions that are summarized in here.
Does this agreement have to do with any piece of art that the foundation provides as a tribute to the Marine Corps, or just this specific one?
This specific one.
Any other questions? I guess as a matter of form, I should go back due to the intervening discussion and ask the secretary to reconduct the call.
Mm-hmm.
Aye.
Aye.
Chris Colbert, William Gilbert,
No.
Patricia Griffin,
Aye.
Karen Con.
Abstain?
Okay, thank you. Before we take up the next item, which is the eagerly awaited Integrated Pest Management Report, I thought we could take a pause for just a couple minutes if we have members of the audience who don't feel they want to remain for that riveting presentation. And those of you who are leaving, I thank you very much for your participation this evening. In the absence of a... All right. I would like to continue. All right. We are continuing the City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission March 20th, 2013 Commission meeting with item 9, the 2012 Integrated Pest Management Annual Report.
Chair Miller, I'm Jeff McKee. With the Commissioners, I'm Jeff McKee. I'm the Maintenance Superintendent for the airport. And I'm here to give you a 2012 report on our 2012 efforts in integrated pest management. So outlining what I'm going to talk about tonight, a little bit of background about the program, the results for 2012, the airport context within the city, the pesticide used within the city, our outlook for 2013, and then I'll ask for your recommendation to recommend that council accept the report. Integrated Pest Management Program is a program to reduce the amount of toxicity of pesticides used in the city. The program encourages the city to use the least toxic approach for controlling pests. It was adopted in 2004. We have a Citizens Advisory Committee that works closely with city staff to implement the program. As I go through the presentation, the term pest applies to both plants and insect pests. And we adopted a fair zone approach at the beginning of this process where both the materials and the locations are categorized by potential hazard. So as I talk about green, those are the least potential for hazard chemicals as I go on here. The annual report was drafted by the Parks and Recreation Department, Santos Escobar and Ken Brown. I'd like to thank them. It's reviewed by the Integrated Pest Management Advisory Committee, who is Greg Chittick, Kristen Labonte, Larry Saltzman, and Christina McGinnis. They put in a lot of hard work over each year, so I'd like to thank them also. Our results summary, we logged 4,351 hours of alternative efforts, and alternative efforts are mechanical and physical type hours that we log instead of spraying pesticides. We decreased our pesticide applications from 2,538 units in 2011 to 1,084.8 units in 2012. And I think it's mostly attributable to a dry year last year, so that really limited our mosquito abatement efforts for the year. Alternative efforts, this graph, the maroon bars show the airport alternative effort hours since 2004, and the blue bars show the citywide alternative effort. You can see the tall bars during 2007, 8, and 9 for the airport. Those are the years we were doing the mitigation, maintaining the mitigation areas, so we had a lot of hours at that time. Our alternative efforts for the last year were manual weed control and rodents, manually catching gophers and mice. During the last year, airport performed 45% of all the alternative efforts that were recorded within the city, so that's good for us. Pesticide use. I put this graph together to show you how overwhelmingly mosquito chemicals dominate the materials that we apply. The kind of blue colored squares, the 602 and 3,045.9 are mosquito abatement chemicals that we applied during the year. The maroon wedges are the weed abatement chemicals that we applied, and the yellow wedge is for rodent control. So those are units, some are gallons and some are pounds, so but showing you how much is used there. On the right-hand side, those are the chemicals that we applied during the year. For mosquitoes, airport teams with Mosquito and Vector Control District, and they actually monitor the slough and provide mosquito control for us. We primarily depend on Alticid XR, which is the yellow material there, and BTI, a green material, to prevent the emergence of adult mosquitoes. So you can see that it varies widely depending on how much moisture we have in a year. Last year we tried Natular, which is a dry chemical, and it was a green chemical. That's why we got such a large spike last year. It worked well, but we went back to Alticid this year. For weeds, we use chemical weed abatement efforts on the airfield and in the islands on Hollister Avenue. You can see we've got kind of a declining trend there. Again, I think due to the dry year, not as many weeds. The reason that we use it on the airfield is that weeds obstruct the visibility of airfield lights and signs. Rodents, we use most of our rodent control efforts are on the airfield to try to reduce attractants for predators. They cause a bird strike hazard. We used 48 pounds of difascinone-based rodenticide during 2012. You can see that's near a low for the reporting since 2004. Citywide use, the graph on the left is airport only, and the graph on the right is citywide, including airport. So you can see that airport used 31% of green materials used by the city, and 95% of yellow materials used citywide, and airport applied no red materials this year. Those are the highest concern. For 2013, we've been having challenges with the Goleta Slough mouth opening. It's been closed, and it's harder for us to open it these days, so we have a lot of impounded water out there, and that could substantially increase the amount of material used to control mosquitoes for next year. Our gopher populations are on the rise on the airfield, and so we may be looking for a fumitoxin exemption and do a treatment in this coming year to control gophers on the airfield. And then termites in airport buildings. We have several buildings that need to be treated for termites. That requires an exemption and treatment. So the exemption process is we go before the Citizen Advisory Committee and ask for an exemption in a specific situation usually. So I think that's it for me. I'm asking for your recommendation that you recommend that the City Council accept the City of Santa Barbara Integrated Pest Management Strategy 2012 Annual Report dated March 2013. Be glad to answer questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. McKee, and congratulations on keeping us out of the red zone there, and really all your hard work that we know goes into really balancing this very difficult trade-off between cost effectiveness and the environment. So I think we all trust that you're doing an excellent job out there. Questions?
Yes, just a curiosity with our lovely new LEED certification. Is there anything about the new terminal that, other than it being new, that will make it easier to deal with pests, or that will cause there to be fewer of them?
We recently implemented a trapping strategy over there. Instead of applying chemical to control rodents in the building, we're actually trapping the rodents. Our staff have been doing that, and we hired a firm to help us with that during the coming year. So we're hoping not to have to apply chemicals there.
Good report. Well done.
And congratulations also on your war against those wily rodents.
Make a motion that we recommend it, the report to the City Council.
Second.
All right. Thank you. All in favor of recommending that the City Council accept the Santa Barbara Integrated Pest Management Strategy 2012 Annual Report dated March 2013. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? The recommendation carries. Thank you. And that brings us to item 10, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2014-15.
Yes. Tonight, Airport Commission is going to get a first look at our budget, and we meet tomorrow with the city administrator and finance staff, so there could be changes still in the making, but we wanted to give you a look beforehand. The items that I'd like to cover tonight, just an overview of the department as we normally do. Last month, Karen did a presentation on the department, the proposed department reorganization, and based on the budget and the numbers, we've made some changes with that I'd like to address. And that's part of the budget balancing strategy that we're implementing. We'll look at our revenues and our forecast, and also our expenditures, and then just touch on briefly the key performance objectives for this coming year. Sometime back, we had a strategy session for the airport to come up with a strategic plan, and at that time, we redid our mission statement, but we failed to put it in the budget. And so this year, this is our new mission statement that will go into the adopted budget. We feel that we're, as the Tri-County region's airport of choice, Santa Barbara Airport will be self-sustaining, exceed expectations for safety and quality service, and meet the air transportation and economic development needs of its customers and partners. You fully remembered that the airport is a department of the city, but we operate as a business. We're an enterprise fund. We do not get any subsidies for the airport. All of our revenues are generated on the airport, and we spend it on the airport for operation, maintenance, and capital improvements. We have 8 programs that address the work and activity on the airport, and administration, business and property, marketing, facility maintenance, air operations, area maintenance, airport security, certification and operations, and facility planning and development. This is for the current year. We have 54 employees. This graph illustrates the allocation of those positions by program. Obviously, maintenance has the most, and security's a close second. The department reorganization, as I mentioned, Karen went into a great deal of detail last month, talking about the efforts for a need to look at our current and future service demands for the department, and also increased workload that has been generated primarily by TSA regulations and procedures, but also new operations for the airline terminal. So what we are attempting to do is to realign within the existing program some of those duties and tasks to do a better span of control for supervision, and also to hopefully retain someone for more research, financial management, and analytical support. That's the job for the properties department. Our responsibilities are listed from property management, financial, purchasing, accounts payable, grant management, just about anything that deals with money, we do it. Staffing, we're pretty lean. We have a senior management specialist, which is Rebecca, administrative assistant, Lynn Goodnick, and then we have an administrative specialist, is Desi, and we had a portion of an accounting assistant in properties, and that position is vacant. As I mentioned, we have a need for a position to perform higher level analytical work. Report writing is critical, and some financial planning. So we're proposing to take the vacant accounting assistant, and HR, Human Resources, has determined that the level needed is an administrative analyst 1 position. A security program does the law enforcement for the airport, and also all of the TSA requirements at the checkpoint. They also do patrols throughout the airport, and primarily they also enforce the security directives that TSA sets down. And that has really, as Karen said last time, I mean, it's ongoing. and you're really not given a choice. You're said, here's the directive, and we'll look at your compliance in 90 days or 60 days. And that has put a real burden on this particular program. Once again, they fulfilled the law enforcement officer arrest authority at the checkpoint. So it's manned 19 hours a day. Anytime that the checkpoint's open, then patrol has to be available to respond to any issues that occur during screening. They also administer the ground transportation program, keeping people away from the curb. That was pointed out earlier. TSA doesn't like cars hesitate at the curb, so we have traffic aids that are out there during operational hours. Those same aids also do the exit lane at the terminal to keep people from going back into the terminal once they've come out of the secure area so that they don't go back in. Current staffing in patrol, we have 1 supervisor, 4 patrol officer 2s, and 6 airport patrol officers. Our proposed change is to reclassify the airport patrol supervisor. His position needs to be pegged with others at the waterfront. I just mentioned traffic control and exit lane. During the reorganization discussion, we had thought that we would take come up with 3 full-time positions and then supplement this activity with hourlies. Unfortunately, when we put the budget together, the numbers weren't there. And so at this point, we're maintaining status quo. Security Operations Center, this is a non-law enforcement activity, but they're open 24 hours a day. They monitor all of the cameras on the field. They coordinate dispatching with patrol. They answer phones for public calls to the terminal. They document everything that goes on in a log. It's very, very detailed. They also coordinate badging for everybody on the airfield who has need to be inside the outside fence. And that's done with 1 senior operations specialist and 4 operational specialists. Karen pointed this out last time, how many cameras we had to begin with in the old terminal and how many we have now. It's tripled. It's really, I don't know how they can watch them all, as they said at that counter. I don't understand how they can do that. They also have to coordinate vendor deliveries to the terminal. All product that goes through has to be checked before it goes in. They coordinate that with patrol to go over and actually look at the Coca-Cola, look at the biscuits before they go into the terminal. As I mentioned, the badging office, before the TSA directive that said that general aviation pilots had to be badged, or anybody else who goes inside the fence. Initially, it was for the SIDA area, just the terminal. And so we had about 400 badges issued. And that, once we had the new directive, then that number went up to 1,500 badges. And those badges are renewed on biannual or annual? Annual basis. And it's not just go in and get your badge redone. It's not like getting your driver's license. I mean, you have to make sure that you go through the vetting process and that your application's done. And Tracy's going to push a button here.
We just went to 2 years recently to
2
try and
years.
reduce the work.
Good, thank you. So anyway, it's a much more detailed process. And one of the things that we really need to do is to keep track of all of those badges and all of those applications. So records management is a huge effort in that regard. Then we have certification operations. In the past, we had 1 individual in this position, and they coordinated the airfield inspections and also coordinated with the ARF unit. and assisted with Part 139, which is FAA's requirement for commercial service airports, and did the noise abatement program that's been ongoing for 30 years, probably, at least. So we had one person, and he retired last October. And we have a contract, as you know, with the city fire department for 9 fire personnel for the ARF unit. So we're proposing changes to take the Security Operations Center activity from the patrol unit and the badging office from the patrol unit and assign those to the Security Operations area or program. In doing so, we would reclassify excuse me, the noise operations specialist position to an airport operations supervisor, and it would go into the supervisor MOU status. So in summary, we are proposing to add 4 full-time positions, 2 airport operations specialists, 1 senior specialist, and 1 administrative specialist to be assigned to the badging office. We're going to reduce 1 of those specialist positions to half-time. That's based on an agreement. We're reclassing the patrol supervisor and also reclassing the noise operations specialist and reclassing the accounting assistant to an administrative analyst 1. The cost for this for the first year, $192,309, and in 2015, for those same positions, it would be $214,188. So for a fiscal year budget, we took that information and then had each of the programs look at their activities and programs and contracts for maintenance or whatever, and then submit their budgets. And our whole goal, we have to balance one way or the other. So that's our primary goal. And then, of course, we'll implement the reorganization. But as you've heard, with the economy, I think, is picking up. TOT taxes up, as is sales tax in the city. And we've seen an increase in passenger flow through the terminal, and we've been up pretty consistently the last 6 or 7 months. So I think we are hopefully turning the corner. Airline industry continues to make changes, and those we will face as they happen. Skipping on to the reserves for the airport. Last year, we had these at the end of the year. We are fully funded with all of our reserves, $4.1 million total, and then we had reserves above policy of $971,000. Projected revenue for the year with our line items, commercial, industrial, non-commercial aviation, which is really general aviation or anything that's not commercial. The airline terminal includes parking, rent-a-car services, concessions. That's why that one's so high. And then commercial aviation, that's for the airlines, that's paying for building rental, landing fees, boarding bridge fees, and employee parking. And then interest and other, that includes our reimbursement from TSA for the security checkpoint screening. Interest is down and probably will continue to be down for the next couple of years. Yes, it is. So a total of $15.3 million. This chart gives you an illustration of how the funds are allocated or how they come in. So our proposed, okay, the one I just showed you, I'm sorry, was for 2013. This one's 2014 at $14,596,000. I don't know if I've got salaries and benefits, supplies, service, allocated costs, special projects, capital outlay, and appropriated reserves. This is what our expenditures were for this This is what we're projecting for 2013, total expenditures, $15,318,000. So that says 12, but it should say 14, and it's going to be $15,284,000 for our operating expenditures. This shows you our revenue cash flow for 2012, our budget for 13, proposed budget in 14 and 15. So we're looking for 2014 proposed budget of $15,623, and then $15,900,000 in 2015. So if you, the top level maintains those revenues, the total revenues at the top, and then we go through the distribution of our expenses with salaries and benefits, supplies and services. And supplies and services includes the ARF budget and Public Works engineers as well. Allocated cost, and then you can see the others. The capital transfers, you'll notice in 2012, you recall that we had the last-minute audit finding where we had not fully funded some of our capital projects over the years, and so we had to make that up. That's why that's so high in 2012. So the $2 million at the bottom, that's what we owed at the end of the year. But based on our revenues that we generated and some adjustments in our capital program, we reduced that to about $500,000. That's being covered by an FAA grant that we received in September that reimburses the airport for part of our costs for the airline terminal. So now that part is totally zeroed out, and we're starting to build reserves above policy once again. We're projecting for 2013 a very modest amount. If we were to spend the whole $15,300,000, we'd only have about $51,000 over budget. In 2014, the budget would be, it's balanced with the revenues, $15,006. Part of the capital transfers I might call your attention to in 2014 is the airport's portion for the financial management system that's being replaced for the city. So the airport has a portion of that cost. The debt service is listed, and that also includes a small subsidy to the T-Hanger program, about $18,000. We subsidize the debt on the T-Hangers. Key performance objectives, we went through very carefully this year to look at all those, and as to make changes to reflect the reorganization and to take a closer look at each one of our programs and refresh those. Obviously, under administration, to implement the reorganizational plan is a priority, and we also transferred from the marketing program to administration the air service program, putting it back in administration. We hope this year to develop a request for proposals for the fixed base operators by June 2014, and that would be based on the master plan. Marketing, the city is redoing the website, and we will be part of the city's program, and so that's a major project for marketing. We also are increasing our marketing efforts in Ventura County. That's where we see an opportunity to generate more passenger growth, so we're focusing still in Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, and Ventura County. Facility maintenance, they're going to be installing 10 emergency backup ballasts in the terminal for lighting. They're going to do a restroom remodel in this building. And they're going to upgrade the heating and air conditioning system at the tourist center. That building, as you recall, is an old World War II building. It's pretty drafty.
Does that mean there'll actually be heating in it?
Well, no, don't get your hopes up.
We just gave you some portable heaters in there.
the air operations area, the crew will be repainting the surface signs and doing some preventative maintenance every 2 years. And security, based on recent episodes around the country, they're going to do an active shooter response plan. And they're also going to develop a test to be administered after security training, which must be passed before access media can be issued to the test taker. Access media is for the terminal, anyone who has a SIDA badge. Certification operations will be taking on both badging and Security Operations Center. So we need to develop a manual for the badging office. And then we're going to do some audits of the badges to make sure that we are tracking all those in our records management program. And then this year's our triennial, or whatever you say, full-scale emergency exercise, which will be held in the fall. Facilities planning and development, having just recently completed a major improvement, these guys are still using the same type of objectives, but their projects are much smaller than the terminal, but still very important for the airport. We're going to complete construction of taxi rehabilitation and paving of taxiways, Hotel Juliet and Charlie. They also plan to have the design completed for runway 15 right, 33 left. That needs to be designed and bids received by June so that we can get our FAA grant. And then we are still monitoring our wetlands mitigation projects, and in some cases we're just about finished. I guess January 2014 will be completed with that monitoring. So tonight I ask the Airport Commission to recommend approval of the department's annual budget for 2000. It's 2 years, 2014 and 2015.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation, and thank you, as always, for all the tremendous amount of work you put into this budget and your stewardship of it. Questions? Must be some questions.
Underwhelmed.
It just sounded very thorough.
Thanks.
And as always, we know that it's yours to manage. And there's always, those adjustments that, come into play should things be different. Then, in the absence of comments, do we have a motion?
I move we recommend approval of the Airport Department's annual budget for fiscal year 2014 to 15.
Second that.
All right. All in favor of recommending approval of the Airport Department annual budget for fiscal year 2014-15?
Aye.
Opposed? The budget is approved. And that takes us to, I think, our final, well, not final item, but an update on the Code of Conduct for City Advisory Groups. And I believe you'll have some documentation on that as well.
Yes, and well, I'll go through it, but you have a copy of the revised guidelines, and you need to sign that you received them, if you will. Thank you.
And return those this evening to
yes,
the Commission Secretary.
While we have you at hand. In 2003, City Council established guidelines for their advisory groups. And then in September of last year, they directed staff to conduct training of staff liaisons and advisory group members in the areas of conflict of interest and code of conduct, and to provide or to present to Council a revised code of conduct to reflect changes recommended by the city attorney. This was generated out of what happened at an ABR meeting in terms of members abstaining because of a philosophical objection to a project that they were reviewing. And so this training is to try and help keep commissioners out of trouble, and to know when is the appropriate time to abstain and not, plus other ethics issues. So staff returned to City Council and with the revised guidelines, which you have this evening, and they named 13 different commissions who will be required to take ethics training, and Airport Commission is one. And one of the main reasons is that you approve leases and have some approval powers, such as ABR also have some approval powers as well. So they will be giving a workshop on May 8th at 4:30 in the Central Library Faulkner Gallery for advisory group members. And if you can attend, I encourage you to do that. If you're unable to, you can fulfill the requirement by that's offered online by the Fair Political Practices Commission, and then it gives the web address there where you can go on and take it. You'll be receiving in the mail or through us a letter advising you of the May 8th training session. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up and also give you a copy of the updated guidelines. And I attached the city clerk's council report, so it's much more informative than I could ever be. So I just wanted to let you know that, and that was all I had to share with you.
All right. Thank you for that item. Sure, I'll get you our forms. And then, lastly, the director's report.
Okay. Well, I will just very quickly mention two things on the director's report. For February, we were down 1.4%, which is disappointing. But year-to-date, we're still up 0.3%. So that's for January and February. So hopefully we'll continue the trend. As Hazel said, we've had a long run of a number of months now. We've been in positive territory, so hopefully that will continue. And then as we get into spring and then June, we'll have the Portland service return, and so that shall help bump our numbers as well. On the master plan, the advisory committee met this afternoon. This was an additional scheduled meeting to review and have more discussion on the alternatives and try and kind of coalesce comments to start narrowing down from, I don't know, how many did we start with, 4 or so alternatives down to one alternative that we can, proposed alternative that we can carry through for the financial analysis and then on through an environmental review. We had a really good discussion today of the different aspects of airfield, what do we call it, proposed or issues. One included the extension of taxiway H. Right now it's just a partial taxiway in terms of it ends before the end of the runway. So this would allow 2 parallel taxiways the full length of the main runway, which is a better safety situation. Also, one of the proposals was for closure at some point of runway 15 left, which is one of the north-south runways. And we had a lively discussion on that, and so that will help. It would, and where I'm going with all this is that all the discussion that we had today will be, the consultant will take it back, kind of run it through, seeing where changes could be made, and then come back to the group in probably near the end of June, and hopefully have a alternative that everybody feels, pretty good about, and maybe just minor tweaking. See if we can accomplish that. And so then just proceed from there. So I thought we had a really good meeting. I think the committee has, from the very beginning of the project, been very forthcoming with ideas, feedback. And it's really been appreciated in terms of their participation. So I don't know if you all have anything you wanted to add to the what happened today at the meeting, but
Yeah, it was certainly a lot of lively, informative discussion. Is it the case that the interim documents that were just sent to us are also going on the website?
Yes.
Maybe they're already there. Okay, so those of you who didn't get the packet, it is available out there to the public.
yeah, encourage people to look at it.
I think there's a link from the Fly SBA website.
Right, flysba.com. It's right on the front page, and just click and go right on. Hopefully, go right on through.
All right. Questions on the director's report? All right. I guess there was one commission matter. Maybe it's probably everybody's already filed, but there's the statement of economic interest filing deadline, which could have been today, actually.
Yeah.
It's very soon, if not today.
Yeah, if you haven't done it, please do it. So otherwise, the city clerk starts sending out reminder emails and. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. No other questions on the director's report? No. With none, then we are adjourned. Thank you all.